This is the first time you're speaking about this. You have been off the radar for the last few months for a good reason.
So I actually ended up having a miscarriage around 7 weeks. I honestly feel like I wanted to die. Like, it felt so horrific. The pain was unbearable.
I think you are the biggest red flag and worst person in the world if you blame a woman for having a miscarriage. Do you think we're told mixed messages in society around fertility?
The frozen eggs are pretty much your last resort. They don't go to them first.
This might be a really difficult part for you to talk about, but I want to talk the birth and the trauma.
They discovered that I had something called IUGR. The baby is no longer growing, and I had to have an emergency C-section. He said, we can't wait till next week because I can't even guarantee the baby's going to be here.
Today's episode is a very special one with one of my closest friends, Dr. Rhona Eskander. Someone many of you will recognize as she's been on this podcast many times before, but this conversation is unlike anything she's ever shared publicly. For the first time, Rhona opens up about her deeply challenging journey into motherhood, including her baby's time in the NICU. It's a really emotional, honest, vulnerable, and quite a difficult conversation, but one that shines a light on an experience so many parents go through silently. This is not an easy story to tell, and I ask that you listen with compassion and care, and my hope is that in her sharing her journey, we can create more understanding, connection, and space for those navigating similar challenges. I'm actually very, very grateful for Rona coming to spend some time with me today to talk about this very important issue, because we have no idea who's been struggling with this silently. So if you do know somebody that's gone through this very difficult period in their life, please share this with them, but also understand that some of the things that we may talk about might be triggering. I really, really, really hope this episode helps you as much as it's also helped me to understand the complexities that aren't often shared about. Let's get into this episode. Rona.
Shiv.
Welcome back to A Millennial Mind.
Hi.
This episode is going to be something a little bit different because this is the first time you're speaking about this. You have been off the radar for the last few months and for a good reason. Talk to me about what's been happening.
So where do you want me to even start, from the beginning or where I've been for the last 2 to 3 months?
Well, I think your journey into motherhood wasn't straightforward. So do you want to start by telling me why that was and what you expected it to look like compared to the reality?
So I think it's really important that I really start from the beginning, if that's okay. I am very open about everything that I've been through, my fertility stuff. We did a podcast on egg freezing, for example.
Yeah.
I, like many women, again, a topic that we've discussed, felt the pressure to do everything by the time you're 30. And this included finding the perfect husband, having the perfect career, and having babies, as well as having all of the financial stability. And as we know, things don't work out exactly the way that you plan. So when I was 32, I froze my eggs, as you know, had a really good supply. There were no issues with my fertility. I was really good at having checks, smear tests, the whole lot, okay? Mm-hmm. I'm privileged because I have a father that's a gynecologist, so I have access and I have the education around all of that. I met my partner around 32, and obviously we're building a relationship. You don't jump straight into let's get married and have kids straight away. I know some people do, but I am the kind of person that likes to build foundations with the person that I'm with. And we had done that. And because I had my eggs frozen, I guess I thought in a way that was a safety. It was an insurance policy, as some people call it. So I wasn't too worried about it. Then pandemic hit, life happened. I just opened up my clinic. I just become a co-founder of a startup, and life did not allow me to really make space for motherhood or having a family. Now, some might say, well, you didn't prioritize it, but I think that realistically, we should be prioritizing also knowing our limitations and knowing how we feel about going into motherhood with the safety and the security. Safety and security was an important factor for me. And that's why I spent time consciously timing it, not just thinking if it happens, it happens. Now, my partner and I decided to get married last year. So I was 36 years old, but we basically started trying when I was about 35 years old. So at that point, biologically, you're classified I think, as a geriatric mother, which again is an extremely problematic title, but I guess it carries the heaviness of being a mother who is older. So I felt a lot of pressure, and I said to him, listen, even though we're getting married by what would have been 36 years old, I was like, let's start trying at 35. I wasn't falling pregnant. And I think one of the biggest myths is that you get told that when you're going to try, you will fall pregnant quite quickly.
Yeah.
People also say, go on contraception, you avoid the whole of your teens, 20s, whatever it is, trying to get pregnant. And then the moment you do try, you don't just immediately fall pregnant. So I was really frustrated, had a lot of tests. And when I had a lot of these tests, they were showing up fine. I was completely healthy. So last year in October 24, I did fall pregnant. That was after about 9 months of trying. And I was really happy. I didn't tell anyone. I had that whole 3-month rule thing, which again, I think is very isolating. I think that's something we're taught as a woman, don't share it. And I get it, it's because something can go wrong. But you're almost then hiding this deeply personal and painful thing to yourself when something goes wrong. So I actually ended up having a miscarriage around 7 weeks. Well, 7 weeks I got told that the baby was non-viable, basically. And a few weeks later, I had a natural miscarriage. And actually what I did is that I chose to have the miscarriage naturally rather than have the injection, the tablet, or having the suction. So you can go down the route. And I was like, you know what, my body can do this. And I think it was one of the most traumatic things that had ever happened to me. So after I had the miscarriage, I was really panicked and I was like, okay, I need to get pregnant again. I really don't want to have to wait that long. I felt a lot of pressure, to get into this motherhood. 3 months go by. I can't get pregnant. So I go and see my doctor, and he basically tells me to try something called letrozole, which is a tablet that helps stimulate your ovulation. Did that, nothing was happening. So I said to him, can we try something else? And then he did something called IUI. And fast forward, we got pregnant. I had hidden everything online. I didn't tell anyone. And the reason why I've been gone or missing, as it were, is because everything was perfectly fine with my pregnancy. And then at the 7-month scan, they discovered that I had something called IUGR, which basically means the baby is no longer growing. And I had to have an emergency C-section on August the 7th. And my baby had to come out then and there. Otherwise, he wouldn't have made it.
I mean, I think the first thing I have to say is I'm just astonished at how articulate and clear and level-headed you've just said that, given the fact that you gave birth 6 weeks ago. I just find it phenomenal. Number one, I've watched you do this entire journey, and I feel even you saying it is making me so emotional because it's such a,
I know,
it's really challenging, right? But I think the first thing I want to touch upon is what you said around egg freezing and how you said that you were privileged enough to know that information.
Yeah, sorry. Wow. That got me emotional, seeing you emotional. Basically, I think that I was one of the first people that was open to talking about egg freezing. And the reason why I've decided to open up this journey with you and not anyone else is because I really trust you. And I think that there is so much that's not spoken about when it comes to motherhood and pregnancy. And I think there's so much stigma and expectations. And I honestly think it's one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do. When people talk to me and they're like, that was so traumatic, what happened to you, which, we can talk about.
Yeah.
I'm like, I've found very little online to kind of comfort me. And I found the only thing that was really comforting was Reddit, because there was a lot of anonymous people. And this is the same thing with the egg freezing. Again, when I was trying to research it, no one was talking about it online. So now for me doing the egg freezing, talking about the egg freezing at the time, I was like, you know what, no one's talking about it, but why should it be stigmatized? Why?
Course.
And again, why was I privileged? My dad's a gynecologist. He was like, listen, you're 32. Your eggs are really in a good state right now. It's more successful when you're younger. Just do it. And that's why. And I was also lucky enough that his clinic was able to charge me cost price. I still had to pay, but I was, more fortunate from the financial point of view, because it's a huge financial commitment. I found that all quite traumatizing. Egg freezing is traumatizing as well. The weight gain, the mood change. It's not a ball in the park. None of this is. And I think that is why I came out with the egg freezing, talking about it, because I had the education from my father and the financial privilege as well.
And I think another thing you mentioned there as well is like, you're told your whole life, use contraception because you're just going to get pregnant straight away. I know from my own experience, from the people that I talk to, I think maybe 1 or 2 people out of the 50 people I've spoken to recently, genuinely, got pregnant like this.
Yeah.
Every single other person has struggled with it. Do you think we're told mixed messages in society around fertility?
I absolutely do. And I think like there's 2 schools of thought. I think that one school of thought is that women are put under this incredible pressure to do it all in their 20s because their fertility is prime. And then that might be true biologically, but as we know, you might not be ready emotionally or financially, which has a huge implication 100%. On your mental health and your motherhood. But then there's the other school of thought of people that are like, I'm really healthy and I got pregnant at 42 and I'm having another one at 45. And I'm like, okay, great. I understand that as well, but that has to be backed by science as well, because I'm perfectly healthy. I've never smoked. I've never drank. I've worked out my whole life. I have had a healthy diet. I'd say the only negative contributing factor is stress, running my own business. But technically, I'm one of those super healthy people that could have been like, don't worry about it. If you live a healthy life, you could just fall pregnant. And there might be people now that are going to argue with me and say, no, that's not true. If you're super healthy, it's really easy in your 40s. But we need to really look at the science behind it. And things do change biologically. There's nothing wrong with that. I wasn't ready in my 20s.
Yeah.
And I found it difficult in my late 30s. It's just a fact.
Yeah. And I think being honest about that is really important as well, because a lot of people then rush to say like, well, now I should just have a baby in my 20s because this might happen to me, or I might not be able to conceive later. Right. And I think a lot of people then just put that pressure on themselves rather than owning the fact that I'm not ready now, but I'm being cautious about my 30s. So I'm going to egg freeze.
Yeah.
But you didn't use your frozen eggs, did you?
No. So I think this is another really interesting conversation. There was a clip that I think went viral. I want to say it was Emma Greedy, just double check that. But she actually talked about the whole like frozen eggs thing. Freezing your eggs is an extremely empowering thing you can do, but really have your wits about you and really understand what it means. Because what I found was, I was like, why don't we just use the frozen eggs? Because I was getting really frustrated. And I was like, well, we should just use the frozen eggs. My doctor told me they never just use the frozen eggs. So what happens is the frozen eggs are kind of your backup, right?
Right.
So they would make you do a fresh round of IVF, which is like for the embryo collection, implantation, all that kind of stuff first. And if that fails, I think 2 times or something, then they use the frozen eggs.
Why?
I think it's because the frozen eggs are your backup. So it's like you could still get another round technically.
Got it.
But obviously if there are people that have had to have like really invasive surgery, or they've had cancer or things like that, which doesn't enable them to do another round, etc., and I might be even wrong about that, then they might use the frozen eggs. But the frozen eggs are pretty much your last resort. They don't go to them first. If there's another chance of like a successful round.
What would you want other women to know about the different routes around contraception then, or conception, sorry?
So I think that when it comes to fertility treatments, there's lots of different avenues. And I want to touch a little bit on the IUI thing, which I talked about.
Yes. What is that?
So intrauterine inception, right? So what happens is that it has a very low success rate. I think it is about 10 to 15%. Okay, so it's not super high. Need to double check that, but I think it is 10 to 15%. And ultimately, it is where they give you medication to stimulate you for your ovulation. Then they get your partner to come in, ejaculate, and they get the sperm and they basically insert the sperm inside you. So it's quite a targeted way of doing it, but it's much less invasive than IVF. Now, when I'd initially spoken to a few people about it, they said to me, I don't think that you should bother. It didn't work for me. I don't think you should bother. I ended up having to do IVF anyways. But what I would say is, having been through egg freezing and knowing how invasive that is, I actually found IUI fine, because, and it worked. It actually worked,
Amazing.
So I would say if you can afford it, because again, it's not for free.
Yeah.
It's a budget. If you can afford it, you should try it. Speak to your doctor about it. But it ultimately worked for me. My partner disagrees a little bit because he says, but we did also that week, have a little bit of fun.
Have fun. Yeah.
That it could have been that as well. So it might have been coincidental. So I want to caveat that as well. But I do think that the IUI, definitely had a part to play.
I love that she's like, no, actually, Rona, it was all me.
It was all me. Yeah.
I really want to touch upon a very important topic that I think a lot of people don't really talk about. And that's miscarrying. And I say that because I actually think more people are more open to talking about it in hindsight now, because lots of people are talking about it, like you said, with the egg freezing, right? A lot of people now acknowledge that 1 in 4 miscarry, and they find a community online and they find friends that they can find comfort in because they've gone through a similar thing. But what I really want to touch upon is how to manage going through such a difficult period in your life where you don't feel comfortable to tell everyone. And I'll give you an example here.
Yeah, sure.
I think that the mistake that people have around creators and influencers online is that they don't share everything, right? And they're doing it intentionally. But if someone's had a miscarriage, right? Or if someone's had something that's so deeply personally hurtful to them, how can you expect them to share that when they haven't processed those feelings themselves, right? And I think that that's one thing I really admired around you, is that you did take time off, but you also kept going, right? Like, you have a business to run. You have to keep it going. You're a co-founder in one business, you've got a dental surgery in another. Like, you can't just stop everything, right? How did you have the confidence and how did you have the strength in you to manage all of those emotions at the same time?
To be honest with you, I think because I don't think there's really honesty about how traumatic a miscarriage is, even from the medical profession. Because when the doctor told me you've got 3 options, natural, tablets, the suction, I think it's called DNC, he didn't tell me how traumatic a natural miscarriage is, because in my head, he was like, it's a bit like a more severe period. So I was like, okay, like, can it be managed with painkillers? Like, that kind of thing was going through my head. So when it had happened, I was completely caught off guard. And like, I told a couple of people that it had happened. And again, because if you haven't been through it, you wouldn't know. And I did have a friend that did go through, and she was like, oh, are you sure you want to kind of be at work? And I was like, well, I don't really know. Like, am I meant to take a few days off? Like, what happens? So I remember getting severe pain. I was at work, and no, what had happened was I'd taken the week off, and I went to go see my sister, and I remember bleeding. And when I had the bleed, I felt like, okay, this is not so bad. It was being managed by painkillers. Then what happened was I started violently vomiting and I couldn't get out of bed, and it was horrendous. So we went to the hospital, and they had basically said it was unrelated. So they thought I had gastroenteritis, right? But in my head, I was like, I don't understand why I've got really, really ill all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And my sister and I had eaten exactly the same thing. Okay, now I have to say to you that from a medical perspective, because I'm a medical professional, even my dad, who I spoke to, was like, I don't think it was linked. But for me, it seemed really strange. And like, that was my experience. I don't know what was going on with me. I was really, really unwell. It didn't seem like gastroenteritis. There was violent vomiting. That's what the doctors put it down to in the hospital.
Right.
That stopped. And the next day there was a little bit of a bleed. Then on the Monday, so I was like, okay, maybe this is it, right? Then I went back after 3 or 4 days off, went back to work on the Monday, and I remember getting severe pain and typing to my receptionist and saying, I have severe pain. Please, can you get me some painkillers? And I took an Uber home because I couldn't bear it. I had therapy that day. So I was on FaceTime to the therapist. And then I was like, I'm really sorry, I have to go. And then that was when the real miscarriage happened. And I went to the bathroom. And when I tell you, I honestly feel like I wanted to die. Like, it felt so horrific. The pain was unbearable. And no one was home, and I was on my own. I remember crawling into the bathtub because intuitively I was like, I need heat on my body. I really need heat on my body, and I need water. It was like really weird. And I called G, and I was like, that's my husband. And I was like, you need to come home now. You really, really need to come home now. And he was like, okay. So he came home, and I remember in the bathtub, I started throwing up again because I was so sick. And he was so amazing. And like, you know, we've talked about this, and I don't really talk about my partner online and stuff, but like, he's the most amazing human being, because I remember him just being there for like 2-3 hours until it was over, basically. And that for me felt like a mini labor, what I would imagine.
Yeah.
And because my recent experience completely stripped me away of like labor pains because of what had happened, because the baby had to come so early, I was like, this really felt like more of a labor than what I've just had, because like the contractions like feel like the baby has to come out, you know? So for me, it was one of the most traumatic things. And because no one really knew, I think I told you because you're one of my closest friends, because no one really knew, Shiv, I couldn't share the pain with anyone. Do you know what I mean? That means like patients, staff, people around me. Do you know what I mean? And I felt like we are not supported as women and as a society, because miscarriages are so traumatic. They are so traumatic, you know? And then you're just expected to carry on, right? Yeah. You're not really like, do we have time? Do we get miscarriage like leave? No, you kind of just take off time in your own time. So that for me was one of the worst experiences in my life.
Oh, it's really hard actually when you're talking, because I'm trying not to bawl my eyes out, because I remember like at the time, does that make sense? It's like, I'm like remembering how you felt at the time. So my emotions are like attached to you as a guest rather than like hearing it from the first time. Yeah. But I think what you've just said there is really important on two fronts. One is that 1 in 4 women experience a miscarriage.
Yeah.
And whilst a miscarriage is spoken about, maybe the trauma of actually having one and experiencing one is not.
Yeah.
Right? And I think you're 100% right there, because I've never had someone explain it to me. You were the first person that explained it to me that day, and I remember it so vividly. And I think that like even my mum, who's had a few, she's never talked to me about what happened. She did say to me it was horrible. I remember her telling me that.
Did you talk to her about it after it happened? Like,
yes, as in she had a miscarriage before me.
No, but did you ever talk
have
about
I spoken
it later?
to her? Yeah, I have spoken to her, but she's never explained how difficult it was. She's always just said it was really hard. And then, you know, we tried for you and then we had you and it was amazing. You know, I think that, and I think that's how parents remember it, like in a reflection, right? Like it was a really horrible time. It was horrible, but then we had you. But right now you're experiencing it in real time and you're talking about it, whilst my mum probably doesn't even remember it because she wasn't even allowed to speak about it to anyone. And I think the problem with sometimes statistics are, well, 1 in 4 women go through it. So it can't be like that crazy. You know, it's kind of like pregnancy. And I'm going to talk about that. It's like when people say how hard it is to give birth, it's like, well, every woman does it.
But this is,
you know what I mean?
I think first of all with miscarriages, and this is why I wanted to talk about it, is like, as women, we have so much shame.
Yes.
And I don't know if like we've put the shame on ourselves or it's because society puts the shame, but you almost feel like your body has failed in a way. And I think that that's quite heavy. And that's maybe why people don't talk about it. And then, as you said, women are just expected to. We are biologically designed to give birth. So why should we even complain about it?
Right.
And when I was in the hospital, in the maternity ward, they even told me that some partners behave so badly towards to their wives about like birth. Some of them are like on the phone, on their laptops, like not understanding how traumatic it is or what a big deal is. Even if it isn't traumatic in the sense of what I've been through, it's still a traumatic life experience in a way. Of course it is. You know?
You're pushing a human out of you. Like I'm still like amazed, but like somewhat mortified, but like so confused. Like I'm like, wow, it's so interesting. But I think what you just also mentioned there is like, there's a lot of shame and guilt that can be put on to people who've had miscarriages. And all I will say is, I think you are the biggest red flag and worst person in the world if you blame a woman
100%
for having a miscarriage.
100%.
I think that you are not of competent nature if you think that a woman is to blame for having a miscarriage.
Yeah, 100%.
And like I have zero sympathy, zero conversation, zero time for anyone who blames a woman for going to the gym or walking too much or going for a run or drinking a Coca-Cola or whatever it is. Like, of course, there are things that you can do to help your pregnancy, to make it smoother, but you can never blame a woman for miscarrying because it is in her best interest to keep that baby safe.
100%.
And it's not up to your judgment to decide what those best interests
100%.
are.
100%.
Right?
Yeah.
Sorry, I just had to say that. I'm so passionate about that because it drives me mad
totally
when people
agree.
do that. I really want to talk now around your pregnancy journey.
Yeah.
And I want to talk about the first few months because they were lovely. I remember in my last few days when you actually told me that you were pregnant. I can't wait for you to share that video. And you had a lovely pregnancy, didn't you? Like you didn't have too much sickness after the first trimester.
So I think, again, there's two folds to this, is that you have people that experience extreme physical problems, and then you have people that experience mental health problems, which again is not talked about. And I was definitely in the mental health category. So I always knew, as somebody that's got ADHD, that's, passionate about life, etc., that ultimately I was going to be vulnerable and that I was going to be prone to those kind of mental health issues. So what had happened is that no sickness at all, right? So absolutely no sickness. I felt really sad. So I would describe it as like PMS on steroids. So like the mood swings felt really intense. The self-loathing, the judgment upon yourself, the pressure, etc., the crying. But again, like I just kind of got on with it because I have to, and I had to show up at work. And, I always say like my clinic was my first baby in a way because I had nourished and nurtured that and all of my patients. And so I felt really like I had to show up for them in the same way that I do now for my child, you know? And that was fine. I think also what was really important for me is like I was consulting a lot with the doctor, and, people will say like you shouldn't live your life in a way. And I think that's a complete stigma because I was living my life, I was able to go out with my friends, go out for dinner. My energy levels weren't amazing, but I made an effort to do things that made me feel good about myself to ensure that I could have the best pregnancy.
Yes.
Every scan that I went to was absolutely perfect. I was seen with a consultant obstetrician gynecologist. She was the person whose care that I was under. She saw me really regularly. Everything was absolutely fine. In fact, I think my baby was on the 50th percentile of growth. Everything was like going towards things looking great.
Can we just also add here, you came on my hen to Mykonos when you were 6 months pregnant and no one knew, like we didn't tell anyone, right?
Yeah. So, and again, like, the doctors were like, absolutely do things. I was really mindful with the type of exercise. I completely I'd taken HIIT exercise like out of it. I was doing more like gentle stuff, like strength training. But again, really important for your body. I was like
100%.
My pelvic floor, making sure that my birth is lovely. I really wanted to have a natural birth as well. That was so in my birthing plan. Okay.
And you're eating very well. I want to add those two things. And sorry, just to cut you. I just want to say that you are somebody who's always eaten very well.
Yeah.
And I would say very healthily and very clean.
Yeah.
Right. And you're also someone who's worked out for a long time.
Yeah.
So working out and eating clean while you were pregnant was part of your wellness routine anyway. It wasn't, I think especially when I talk to people who have, and this is my own experience, I want to emphasize this is my own experience. When I talk to people who are in my culture, right? Again, my own experience, not saying everyone is like this, but a lot of the times their mums are very much like, don't exercise, don't go to the gym, and eat way more than you should because you're eating for two.
Yeah.
Right? That is very normal. So a lot of the friends that I've had that have experienced this, not even that, even if I talk to my mum and her friends, they all said that they like put on like 30 kgs or like 20 kgs. They were never allowed to go to the gym. My mum was like, I wasn't even allowed to walk. Like I never even went. My mum didn't even know what a gym was, So she would say like even going for a walk was like too strenuous. And I think that can be really detrimental in terms of that mental health factor that you're talking about. Because if you completely lose yourself and if you're never walking outside, if you're never going to the gym, if you're too afraid to do anything that's going to harm the baby, it can also put a lot of pressure on the mother, right?
Yeah, and I think like one of the biggest things that I've learned, is that your mental health really matters more. And I think 100%. In light of what is happening in our world today, we are not a vessel.
Correct.
In like places like America where they are living in this dystopian Handmaid's Tale reality where like brain dead women are expected to carry babies and you're not allowed to even have, their families cannot even have autonomy ridiculous. Of what they do is so scary. And it's like, we are not just vessels,
Correct.
You know what I mean? Like the most important thing is the mother and baby,
Yes.
They come together. They are so connected, and that's what I've realized and learned. So I did things that were good for my mental health, but I was also really mindful. And as I said to you, like I've never been a hardcore person in terms of like, even when I came on your hen, I would go home early, things like that. And that was really good for me as well to get balance and break because I'm happy being around my friends. Yeah. So it was really, I would say, and I hate to say it, easy in a way. Supplements, nutrition, seeing my friends and everything like that. And like, you're right, you know, these old wives' tales about eating for two, not doing exercise and things like that. I consulted loads of doctors and nutritionists, and they were like, there's no science behind this.
Literally,
you know?
I would see women in like a Barry's class and they were 6 months pregnant. And they were like, I've been coming every day. And I'm like, oh my God, I'm not even pregnant. And I never come. So I also think it's body dependent, but I do think that they are old wives' tales for sure.
And also I think the most important thing to note is, which you had said is that what I understood as well from like experts in neonatal, like personal trainers, and also my doctors, is like, don't start anything new. So for example, like if you've never done weight training, don't start weight training in your pregnancy. So
Obviously.
if you know, that's important to know. So like, we're not saying go on a Barry's class and you've never been on one because you're pregnant now.
Exactly. Or like Rona, who's never been to a Pilates class. Can you imagine?
I know. I need to go now.
But yeah, sorry, carry on. So you're talking about your pregnancy.
Yeah. So then it wasn't until, like, I say 7 months because it was 28 weeks. And I remember that people had really started to comment on the fact that I didn't look pregnant, including my patients. Because at this point, we'd started to tell my patients, and they were like, your bump is so neat. You look so small. And I was like, should I be worried about this? And they were like, no, I was a really neat bump person. You're just going to have a little football bump or whatever it is. And because I'd never been pregnant before, I didn't know what it meant. I carry weight on my hips and my bum and my legs. So I had put on a substantial amount of weight for me at that point. But I was like, but the bump's not popping, you know, maybe it'll pop at 8 months, maybe it'll pop at 9 months.
Yeah.
And then I went to the 28-week scan, and I said to my doctor, I was like, should we be worried about the size of the bump? And she was just like, I don't think so. Everything's fine. She's like, but let's do a scan. Let's do your scan that you're due for. And I remember her face dropping at the ultrasound scan. And I was like, is everything okay? And she was working alongside another neonatal doctor who's amazing. And his name is Dr. Kypros Nikolaides. He's really famous. He's one of the only people in the world that performs surgery on the babies in the womb. And there's loads of documentaries about him. You should definitely try and get him on your pod, okay? But he's a hard man. Yeah. So she was working alongside him, and he sees people for the scans. It's the most sophisticated scan, I believe, in London. Might be biased, but it's incredible. So she worked alongside him, and she basically said her ultrasound wasn't that sophisticated, but the baby looked small. And everything had been tracking up to like the 50th percentile, but at this point, it looked to her like it dropped to the 3rd percentile. No.
Explain that to me. What is 50th percentile? What's 3rd percentile?
So basically what they do is percentile is like what the growth should be for your baby compared to other babies. Okay. So I can't remember if it's like another 100 babies or 1,000 babies or something like that. So it's like what the measurements are of those babies. And so like a 50th percentile would be like the average size of those 100 babies. Okay. Or 1,000. You have to check that. And then the 3rd percentile means that the baby is much smaller compared to those other babies. What I have to say is that obviously it depends on the pool of babies, because naturally as well, Asian babies are actually much smaller than, for example, Nigerian babies. Does that make sense?
Right. Okay.
So you might think, oh, my baby is like super tiny, but your baby also, like from a genetic point of view, or if you have small parents, or even if your mum, for example, had small babies. Does that make sense? There's loads of different factors. But for me, it was unusual because it was a drop. It wasn't like he started out small, which would have not been a worry. So if he started out small and stayed small, he went from kind of like the average measurement to a lower down measurement.
Okay.
So I was really panicked, and she told me to go and see Nikolaides that day or like the day after. So I was in my head, I was like, what is going on here? Like, why do I have to go like so urgently? The pregnancy's gone fine. I'm pretty much at 7 months now, you know, like, and again, the 5 month, which is the big one, where you do something called the NIP test, you know, panorama to check for things like all the syndromes, all clear, everything was fine. So in my head, I was like, what's going on here? So I went to go see him, and he was like, listen, like, we're just going to monitor you very closely now, change it to like weekly scans. And what they do is they measure something called your Dopplers. Okay. So your Dopplers are basically the blood flows to different things. So they look at the blood flow to the heart, to the lungs, to the umbilical cord, etc. Okay. And they basically look at the blood flow distribution. And then what they start to do is that they want to monitor you every week, because they want to see if the baby's growth continues on the 3rd percentile. So she thought I was on 9th. It turns out I was on 3rd. So can you imagine my emotions going from 9th to 3rd to like, what is going on here? And basically they said, if he continues on the 3rd, the baby, then you leave it the way that it is, because you want to get the woman to at least 30 weeks or more, because that's when you're in the safe-ish zone, okay, for the baby to come out. But in my head, I was like, oh my God, this is just terrible. Like, I need to do everything that I can to keep this baby on the 3rd percentile. So I had to go in every week, and then it turned into every single day, because then the blood flow started changing. So they started changing to all of the like different organs. So I started doing my own research, and that was also when I came across the gentle birthing method, which I think is really important to note. And I'd been recommended someone called Dr. Gowrie, who I want to shout out as well. As you know, we've talked as well. She's very much about the Ayurvedic method, and she's someone that I would also recommend. And by the way, I paid for all these people, so I'm not endorsed to say this, but I think it's helpful for people to have direct recommendations. Dr. Gowrie is very much, she was an obstetrician for many years on the NHS, and her method is very much focused around that holistic birthing method. And it's about nutrition, it's about like meditation, reflexology, Ayurvedic diet, etc. So I contacted her immediately because a lot of people had recommended her, and she was incredible. And I'd done some stuff with her, and she put down a lot to stress, which was really interesting. And she tried to do a lot of hypnotherapy with me, reflexology and things like that. But I personally think it was just too late. Things had gone wrong. The provisional diagnosis that the doctor had given me is something called placental insufficiency, which basically means it was a placenta problem, and it can just happen to women. Yeah. So it's not like, people love to point fingers, like you said. So they might say, was it this? Was it that? Was it because you were going out? Was it because you weren't eating this? Because of that? But in reality, it was literally because my placenta had failed, essentially. And according to my father, who's a gynecologist, that can actually happen at the moment of conception. So it's because of the blood vessels at the time, and it then just shows up later. So what had happened is that my baby wasn't getting enough oxygen and nutrients to grow in the way that he was meant to grow. And that is why his growth restriction had started.
I mean, there's so much I want to kind of unpack with you here. Firstly, I want to talk around not showing.
Yeah.
I think that the one thing that we as women are really terrible at is complimenting women for looking skinny whilst they're pregnant, and also looking skinny once they've given birth.
Yeah.
And I think that so often we have been programmed, it's not even our fault, because we've been programmed to think that if you don't look pregnant, it's a good thing. If you've just given birth and you don't have a bump, it's a good thing.
Yeah.
And I think what you have just said is like, it's not a good thing. There was a warning sign. And I know and it's also tricky to say this, that it's a warning sign, because I guess for some people, they don't pop until they're like 7 or 8 months or 9 months.
Yeah, and I didn't get there.
You always hear stories of people being like, I didn't even know I was pregnant until I was like 8 months and I had to like go into the hospital. But like, I think in general, what I'm trying to say is that if something isn't usual, if you perhaps aren't popping, right, get it checked. Don't accept the compliment of, oh my God, I look so skinny and it looks amazing, because you are carrying a baby.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing. But I remember you sharing that a lot with me as well. Like in hindsight, it was actually it should have been something that like, well, you did check it, I guess. But what I'm saying is like, people shouldn't necessarily.
But you don't know at what point. Do you see what I mean? Like, you don't know at what point, because I'm almost like embarrassed, like to show the videos of what I was like at 3 months, 4 months. Because I used to send it to you all the time. Because I'd be like, Shiv, I'm 3 months, 4 months. And because the scales were changing, right? Like I think I put on about like 12 kilos, right? So it's like some people put on like 7 kilos. Like I put on 12.
Also, you did have a bit of a bump. Like at my hen, you definitely did. It's like you.
But it
wasn't like you didn't have anything. We were like, oh, there's no possible way. But like you really had to look, I really had to know your body before.
Exactly.
But you are small framed, you know, so like it's difficult to like see it.
But I think also like, listen, I think the whole thing is, again, it's like, why do we feel like it's okay to comment on women's bodies all the time? And this goes back to everything that we try and tell society. And I feel like we just make progress forwards, then we go backwards, then forwards and backwards. Because at the end of the day, like you said, there are going to be people that tell me I look amazing when I was pregnant. Then there are going to be people that said like, I don't look pregnant enough. Then there are people that are going to judge you for losing weight too quickly or for not. Do you know what I mean? Like
100%.
I just got told, like, by someone that I had bumped into, that ultimately that I look better now because I'm bigger than I was pre-pregnancy, that I shouldn't lose too much weight. Do you know what I mean? I think you can't win.
You can't win. People are always going to comment on everything.
Do you
And
see
also,
what I mean?
What's really difficult as well is I can imagine someone might say to you if they don't know, why have you lost the weight so quickly? Aren't you focusing on the baby?
Mm.
You know, people will say horrible things like that without knowing what someone is going through, because you're sharing this online because you couldn't find this information and you want to help loads of other mothers, right? There are some people who never share it and then share what they look like, I don't know, 3 weeks after giving birth.
Yeah.
And people will say, oh my God, look at her. And they make assumptions about that person without knowing the full story. And I think this is what I'm also trying to say as well, in terms of everything that you've been sharing, in terms of that up until that point. You know, you've gone through such a difficult time with your miscarriage and then going through that process, but then also trying for a baby. But also I can imagine the fear of like, am I going to lose it again? And, you know, going through all of that, those emotions. People are looking at your Instagram being like, Rona's living her best life.
Yeah.
But are we going to be sharing those things at the same time? Because we ourselves don't know how to process them. And the expectation that everyone should share everything online, I think needs to be removed. You're not lying. You're not sharing a fake life. It's just that you're not sharing every single detail with everyone on the internet who doesn't have the best intentions for you and who doesn't want to understand you.
You know what? But also I do feel that like it's really interesting because on a different note, for example, when people give, because obviously the industry I work in is in aesthetics, right? And I just want to give this example because I think that's really important, the response that I got. When I talked online about the fact that people were like really tearing apart Anne Hathaway, Emma Stone, etc., for like having supposed facelifts, Lindsay Lohan. And then people were so angry. They were like, why aren't they just admitting it? Why aren't they just... And I literally wrote, I think I did a post on it being like, but why do they owe you? It's not like they're endorsing anything that contradicts it. Do you know what I mean? Like, fine, Lindsay Lohan came out and said it's my creams, which is a bit like, okay, lol. But apart from that, the others, it's like, they're actors, like what they do. And they were like, they are entitled to tell us. That's what some people said. And their reasoning was they choose to make their lives public, therefore they should tell us. And I find that really interesting because I'm like, but there is such thing as boundaries. You don't get access to every single part of people's
100%.
Lives. Like I don't
They chose to act. That was their choice.
Correct. I choose to be a dentist just because I choose to do things for my dentistry publicly. Correct. It doesn't mean you have every access to every part of my life.
100%. And I think that we really need to start being aware of that and also understand the intention behind it. Not every creator is hiding things from you.
Yeah.
Maybe they haven't faced those things themselves.
Yeah, exactly.
This might be a really difficult part for you to talk about, but I want to talk around the birth and the trauma.
Yeah.
You were at work.
Yeah.
A few hours before you had your C-section.
Yeah.
Talk to me about that.
So when I say I was like living through hell that week, because what had happened is that I was having my daily scans. I went to go see Dr. Mina on the Monday, and she said to me, the Dopplers, i.e. the blood flows, she's like, are looking okay-ish, but I need Dr. Nicolaides to like basically like sign that off. So I went to go see him on the Wednesday because that's when he works. And I was working and we'd moved all of my patients and we'd cancelled patients. And it was really hardship because also like most of them were okay, but there was some that made me feel really guilty about like not working, cancelling appointments and stuff. And like I really carry that heaviness with me because again, I was like, are we just expected to carry that trauma with us? Like as women, we're just expected to carry on because there's no rules set on the fact that we're like allowed to just take time off. I found it honestly one of the most depressing times of my life. I think that was the only time that I was like, dentistry for me, I was like, how can I do this? Like I was so scared as well because like, how can I do this? Like I'm going to have a baby and like, how can I do this? Because people are not giving me the space and the empathy that I need. I went to go see him on the Wednesday. And his face dropped. His face literally dropped. And he was just like, this is not a good situation. And I was like, okay. He had also said that if the baby made it to 32 weeks, that we'd have to do an amnio test. So do you know what an amnio test is? So it's basically you test the amniotic fluid of the baby. And what happens is that it shows you if there's any problems with the baby. So it's more accurate than the 5-week test that you take. But the risk is that if you do it too early, or if you do it in general, it can risk like a spontaneous miscarriage, abortion, labor, all that kind of thing. So he was like, it's too risky now because the baby's too young. So let's wait to 32 weeks. So I was at 30 weeks at this point, like 30 weeks and 2 days. And he was like, this is not a good situation. And he was like, the baby is now got brain sparring. So brain sparring basically means that like the blood flows are like changing. Okay. So he was just like, we need to take him out now. We can't even wait till next week. Right. And because things were changing every single day, that's why I was also working. Do you know what I mean? Because one day it'd be fine, the next day it would not. One day it'd be fine, the next day it would not. I was living in complete turmoil constantly. And I spent most of my days crying, to be honest. And then he said, like, we can't wait we can't wait till next week because I can't even guarantee that the baby's going to be here. So I basically I didn't know what to do because obviously like at that point I was like, am I even meant to be here or be a mum? Do you know what I mean? Because I was like, he's like, it's been so hard. And I felt I felt really connected. Felt really connected to him as well. So so then he called Mina, and Mina basically was like, right, he was like, you need to admit her right now. Mm-hmm. So they admitted me to Chelsea and Westminster Hospital, and they were like, we plan to take him out on Friday and we need to give you like steroid injections. Okay. And at that point, like, you know, my partner was amazing because he was really strong, but he said to me, like, he was so worried because he was also like, without the amnio, he was like, is the baby going to be okay? Like, obviously at that point, you know, there's nothing you can do, but like, there's all these questions in your head. So had the amnio, sorry, I didn't have the amnio. They gave me 2 lots of steroids. I went to work the next day because the surgery was the planned C-section for the Friday. And then on the Thursday, I went in to see a few patients. I obviously had it signed off. My doctor was like, fine. I went into work. So I went into the hospital, had a CTG, which basically measures the baby's like heart rate and stuff. Then the baby's heart rate started dipping. So he was having what we were calling decelerations. And my amazing nurse, I remember her saying, I need to go get the doctor. And the doctor came in and was just like, we're not even going to wait till tomorrow. You have to have an emergency C-section now. So I basically went into, I had to call my husband. He was at work and he was like, hey, what's up? I was like, can you come to the hospital? He was like, I'll be there in like 45 minutes. They were like, no, you have 15 minutes. And he like line biked it from Mayfair. So he got there and basically they had to sort out everything like going into the theatre and everything like that. And again, like I didn't plan for a C-section, you know. I mean, I wanted a natural birth. So we had to have an emergency C-section, which again was such a crazy experience for me. I felt really disconnected because having the like contrast, like the miscarriage was horrific, but I feel like having contractions almost like prepares you. And then with the C-section, it was just like I was cut open and within 15 minutes, the baby was out. And luckily for me, and I know it doesn't necessarily indicate anything, he came out crying. And for me, that was so amazing because,
oh my God, that is amazing.
Amazing. It was really beautiful. And then they gave me to him for 2 seconds and then they took him straight to the NICU. And that's when my husband had to go straight away and leave me. So, because you can't walk after an epidural because your legs are numb. So I was like there and then I got taken straight and like they put you, I think I'd had like other drugs. And so I felt really like nauseous. So I was slipping in and out of sleep whilst the baby was in the NICU. And then my husband had to go back and forth from me in the NICU. And also like what people don't talk about is like the recovery of a C-section. Again, like, do you not feel like in a way, like somehow a C-section has been glamorized online? Like people say like, I was out of bed in like 3 days. Do you know what I mean? Like, look at me. And I'm like, the C-section was so traumatic for me. Number 1, the wound. Number 2, I had a catheter. Do you know what a catheter is? So yeah, I couldn't go to the loo. I couldn't shower myself, you know. And some people recover really quickly. I didn't. I was in hospital for like 12 or 14 days from the C-section because I just could not recover. I got a urine infection. It was horrendous, you know. And obviously like I had to be wheelchaired to the NICU until I could like walk properly because my wound was so bad and I found the healing so terrible. I couldn't stand. So I literally remember like thinking it was such a milestone being able to walk from the maternity ward to the NICU. So that was really it. And that was kind of then the beginning of the whole NICU journey, which is a journey in itself.
It's so, honestly, Rona, I think you're just like one of the most bravest people I've ever met.
Thank you.
I'm really trying so hard not to like bawl my eyes out. You said something really interesting about how a C-section has been glamorized. I always thought a C-section was easier. You know why? Flipping headlines, too posh to push is what they used to say about Victoria Beckham.
Thank you.
Right? And I think it's like ridiculous. I thought a C-section is like little, it's not even a big scar anymore, just like little slit. I don't know I don't know why I think about it. Pop the baby out, repair it, you're in bed for 2 days and you're good to go. But I think, again, you know, it's just so important to talk about these nuances of people who have a much more difficult C-section, or they get an infection, or, you know, something else happens, and you kind of lose that independence, don't you? Like, I can't imagine how hard it is to not be able to shower yourself, or to be wheelchaired, to be like, can you take me to see my baby now? Like,
but listen, like, my partner became a full-time carer and looking after the baby. Like, imagine his mental health at that point. Like, you know, it was so like, hard. It's so hard, and he's so incredible, and also helping me just kind of like navigate stuff, you know, communicating to work what's happened to me and all that kind of thing. Like, he took over everything. And I'm so grateful for him to do that, because I think it's really rare to find somebody like that in this world. And again, like, different podcast topic, like, who you choose to do this stuff with in life is so important.
100%.
So important. And like, it's not all about those like glamorous shots. It's literally who is there in your darkest moments. That is so important.
Yeah. Who's going to shower you?
Literally. When you have a catheter coming out, you know, like, out of you.
You are one of the strongest people I know, and it is absolutely not by luck. It is by your continuous hard work. You touched upon a little bit earlier, like the moment you found out that you're going through this difficult situation, you chose to spend your money and invest in this Ayurvedic coach and speak to someone about this and to do therapy. And like, you've done therapy for years, Rona. You've invested in your mental health for a long period of time, which is why I do think that, I know that how difficult you found it, but I do think that you were able to survive it because you had this foundation in place. But I really do want to talk about, you know, that whirlwind of a day in terms of how you did manage your emotions, because you're at work and then you're giving birth and then you're under all these drugs and then your baby's taken away from you. A lot of women, they struggle a lot from PTSD from that. Do you think that you struggled with that?
I think, listen, like, I have no judgment, because I think, like, you know, there have been a lot of people online that have talked about their own birth trauma. And listen, like, I really almost lost this baby. Like, he is my rainbow baby. He literally is my rainbow baby. And I now understand how difficult it is. I don't know what it is about me, but I feel like in so much adversity, I just try so hard to be grateful for things. And it sounds so cliche, but I think gratitude like helps me get through. Like, gratitude for how my husband was, gratitude for like the nurses, gratitude for the doctors, gratitude, etc. But to be honest, the first like 2 weeks were an absolute like whirlwind. I'm really lucky because I didn't get any postpartum. So I felt connected to my baby as soon as possible. Like, as in, like, instantly when he was on me, I was like obsessed. And when I went to the NICU, I was obsessed. And you saw how dedicated I was in the NICU and going into the NICU. And I think that's really important, because for me, I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be so prone to postpartum, like a depression. I'm going to be that person. I just thought I was going to be that person. But actually I wasn't. And I said to the nurses, I was like, what is it like? And they're like, Rona, it's so bad. Like, sometimes women, they can't even look at their baby. They don't even want to hold them, especially babies that go into NICU. Really? Yeah, because what happens is that they can't feel that connection immediately, because the baby's in an incubator. If you think about it, it's really sad. I do not feel like it would be responsible enough for me to comment on postpartum depression, because I didn't get it and I don't know enough about it. Because I think it must be such an intense response that makes you feel that way. And I cannot judge it, and I don't know enough about it.
Yeah. I'm talking more around your emotions though, in terms of how you overcame them. And I think that will kind of lead into the next part, if I'm honest.
Yeah.
The NICU.
Yeah.
What does NICU mean for people who don't know?
So the NICU, honestly, is one of the things I'm most grateful for when it comes to the NHS. The NHS is, it's the longest time I've had to depend on the NHS, and it is unbelievable. Like, big shout out to Chelsea and Westminster Hospital. my husband found it one of the most traumatic experiences of his entire life. And I think because I worked in hospitals before, because of dentistry, so I did hospital jobs, when I was kind of training, I understood a hospital setup. I understand about triaging. I understand about the different levels of care. I understand the involvement of the nurses and doctors. I understand the setup, right?
Correct.
So I'm not afraid of a hospital environment. However, nothing can prepare you for how traumatic a NICU experience can be, to be honest with you. So when the baby first went in, he went into the intensive care part, and what happened was that his breathing had to be completely supported by something called the CPAP, which is something that goes onto his face, and that has to help him with breathing. When I tell you, Shiv, he was tiny, he was so small, and it was really scary for me to see him like that. But also kind of incredible to see how well-formed a baby is at 30 weeks. They were like, wow, this baby is fully formed, it's human,
Right.
So I remember I was at the NICU, and this was about 3 days afterwards, and my husband had to go and do something. And I was reading to the baby, and my husband came, and I read, oh my God, sorry. I read I Love You to the Moon and Back. Have you seen that book? Yeah. And my husband started crying as well. It's the first time I've ever seen him cry.
Really?
And we both were just bawling our eyes out holding the baby. And I was like, I'm never reading that book again.
Yeah, it's so emotional.
It's so emotional.
You can't.
So, and I remember thinking I just need to get on. I just need to get on with it. And I think listen, I could sit here and be like, I did not get the experience that every mother has, to take your baby home, to kind of do everything at home and have that whole we're taking him home in a basket and whatever. But I just had to get on with it. And I actually took the opportunity to just really connect with him and just see okay, this isn't the most ideal experience, but at the same time, I have these amazing nurses. I can learn loads from them. Do you know what I mean? And there's only a limited amount of time that you can do skin to skin with the baby in the NICU. So skin to skin is when you put them on you, and they basically it helps you oxytocin, and it helps you with you can't even breastfeed at that point. So at that point, you can't even breastfeed. So I was really determined to breastfeed, which I think is really important. I was never one of those people that was I'm going to put all this pressure on me. I was if it happens, it happens. But I put the pressure on because I was premature babies do really well on breast milk. It's really good for their immunity. It's really good for everything, for their nourishment. I pumped and pumped and pumped. And I even got a doula to help me with it. So again, shout out to a doula. You were Rona, you get help. Found a doula. Milk was not coming out, right? Now I literally express 8 to 10 times a day. There's freezers full, but I worked at it, Shiv. Again, it's something I worked at.
I know.
I'm not saying that can work for everyone, but I was determined, I was really determined. So I started pumping. I got one of the breast lactation specialists at the NICU. Again, how lucky am I that I have access to that? Not everyone does. And I had to express every day without my baby. Do you understand what that means? So everyone can, people that normally breastfeed, they get the oxytocin, so the milk starts coming.
Right.
For me, I had to pump with this machine and set an alarm at 1 a.m., 4 a.m., 9 a.m. Do you know what I mean? To get the milk going. And I think then when the NICU, I was so lucky, I had the most incredible neonatal nurses around me, and they, they were they kind of became my friends and they helped me. But listen, I it was awful sometimes because my biggest fear was is his development going to be okay? And then I would spiral onto things, articles, ChatGPT, all this kind of stuff. But actually the reality is I just kept asking questions, and I recognized that, so do you know how many babies go into the NICU in the UK every year?
I think 1 in 7, right?
Yeah, 1 in 7 babies go into the NICU every year, okay? Do you know how many babies are born prematurely in the UK every year?
No.
About 50 to 60,000, okay? So there is a lot of premature babies as well, okay?
Wow.
With the NICU, obviously, it's not just premature, it's also any special care babies as well, okay? Now, recognizing how common this was, but how little information there was out there, and even things on TikTok and stuff, if you type it in, there's not that much. There is some stuff,
right,
more than Instagram, for sure, but there's not that much. And again, I was people need to start talking about this, because this is something that can happen. And again, it's premature babies can happen for a number of reasons, but you can have, there were mums that I met that had a totally normal size full-term baby for their first and their second was a preemie or the other way around. Do you know what I mean? You know, so like it was really like inspirational to talk to these parents because I was like, these are like the real heroes. And again, like it's the mums that are in there 24/7 because sometimes the dads have to work or sometimes they don't have the privilege. And some babies are transported from other hospitals because, you know, you've got your local hospital.
Yes.
But Chelsea and Westminster is a level 3 NICU. So
That's
some of them
really
have to come.
One.
And they provide transport for patients' parents. They provide like food. Do you know what I mean?
Wow.
It's amazing. It's really amazing. And I guess like I just took it as an opportunity like to be like, I actually loved some of my days in the NICU because I would sit there all day with him just like lying on me and just read to him. And I just loved that, or listen to like my meditation and my music. And at that point, like the beginning stages of the NICU, you can only be with them for a certain amount of time, just like in terms of like the exposure. It's like not, he graduated really quickly. So he went from like intensive care to high dependency. My husband was there like going, his first graduation, I'm going to record this. And then he went from high dependency to special care. So special care is like the highest one that you can go into, which means that you're then trying to wean the baby off their feeding tube, off the heating mat, or off all of that stuff. So I couldn't breastfeed for ages, by the way, because he was on a feeding tube. Anyway, he went into special care, caught a little infection, went back into high dependency. So you also had the roller coaster within the NICU, getting better, going up, going down, etc. And I became completely obsessed, which to be honest, I still am, with like also his like size and growth. Pediatrician was like, most of them, like 90% or something, normalize, catch up, do fine. Tyson Fury was born at 500 grams. Did you know that?
No.
And he was born at like 6 months. Google that. Yeah.
Wow.
So Tyson Fury is a world heavyweight champion.
You never know, Apollo might be the new like boxer of the world. Yeah. I really think that, you know, the dedication that you had was amazing. But I do want to talk about something that I think people don't really speak about, Rona. And I really want to talk about it in a positive way, but also in a really honest way, because one thing that I think you've said about through this podcast is, in order to keep the baby safe, you need to be safe.
Yeah.
In order to keep the baby healthy, you need to be healthy. In order for your mental health to be at its best, you need to look after you. You know, do you think people judged you for, you know, seeing people when you were at the hospital or when the baby was in the NICU? I know, like you said, you could only have a certain time with him, but do you think there's a judgment on mothers who are not there, like 24/7, sleeping in the lobby, you know, staying overnight in the waiting room?
Yeah, there could be. But I remember being sent home by one of the nurses because I was getting really ill from like burnout because I'd been up so many times pumping, and I had to travel back and forth from Chelsea and Westminster. And she was just like, healthy mum, healthy baby. That's what she said to me, healthy mum. And this is what I said to you, like, we need to remove this whole thing that like we are a vessel just to carry a child, you know, because we are so connected to those children. My baby did so well in the NICU, which they said, touch wood, because I believe that I was so good with my mental health and trying to get him through it. Do you know what I mean? And again, no judgment, but I really worked on that every day. And I remember being sent home like twice by 2 different nurses because I was burning myself out by pushing myself to stay there for too long. So I think that, like people are going to have those judgments, but at the end of the day, I know that what I've done is correct because I give him my absolute all now, because I've had moments to rest and recharge. I've said to people, come meet me at the hospital, like I'll have a coffee with you downstairs or whatever, because at the end of the day, it was that like support that I needed to help me get through.
I actually think I have a part to play with him latching onto you, because do you remember when I came to see him, he like latched onto you that day.
Yeah, and that was the second day,
literally. And then since then, it was all smooth sailing.
He loves it, guzzle.
Exactly.
He loves the guzzle.
Do you feel society glamorizes birth, but never really talks about or prepares women for how difficult a different birthing plan could be?
I think so, but listen, like with the rise,
because we're also trying not to scare women. Also, sorry, just to add in there.
Yeah, like, but I think also like the really important thing is like we need to be a little bit more real. And as you even know, with your wedding, for example, is that the more you look at social media, like I'm sure when you were doing your preparation and stuff, like things just get out of control with people doing things. Do you know what I mean?
I did not feel that at all.
Oh no, but as in, like, did you not find that like when you were like doing research, like you were seeing like people?
I didn't do any research.
Okay, love it. Fine.
You know, like I did no research on my wedding. But yes, if I look at my studio and I compare it to someone else, 100%.
Yeah.
But for my wedding, it doesn't apply because I really did nothing. I was a guest.
But anyways, when people like look at things, they might be like, should I be doing this? Should I have had this? Should I? And I think it's the same with birth. They will see like, and honestly, like the neonatal nurses were telling me, they were like, it's so infuriating because we see people online lying when they're like, I'm 4 days post C-section. Look at me. I'm amazing. I went for a walk. I did this. And they're like, they are literally lying. It is impossible. We've never seen a woman do that, like bounce after like a C-section, you know? So
I saw you in a recover for like 2 weeks after C-section.
Literally that.
Yeah.
And I've never seen it, to be honest, but they were telling me this because it infuriated them, you know, the lack of kind of information. So I feel that like, yes, people do start so much now for social media. And as you know, I clearly didn't do any of this for social media because I'm so private. And this is the only time that I'm going to like really be talking about it. I'm going to share snippets of my journey. I don't want to make my entire platform about this, but I'm doing this for a purpose to help people and to also start the conversations that I think are really important. And I think ideally, like you said, two truths can be true at the same time. You can have a traumatic birth, but also feel like it's the most important thing that you've ever done. You can feel the grief and loss of your former self, and you can also celebrate the new self. You know what I mean? Like two truths can be true at the same time. And I think that's what people fail to recognize. It's the same way people say like, you know, being a trad wife is the best thing in the entire world. And then they're monetizing their content on being a trad wife. But that, in theory, you're not a trad wife, you know what I mean? You know, because you're making money.
Right. I mean, I think that we have to understand that there's nuance in every conversation. And I think that people like to think of things as binary. Like you care or you don't. You're 100% or you're not. You know, you're in it or you're not, right? And I think that we really need to start understanding, like you said, that women are not vessels. If you could rewrite the narrative around pregnancy and birth for women and their partners, what would you kind of say?
I would say that pregnancy and birth is one of the most extraordinary experiences that you're ever going to go through. And do not underestimate how much it will take out of you. And it is okay to ask for help. And I think that's one of the most important things. Don't downplay what you want and what you need. Don't be afraid to ask too many questions, and don't be afraid to ask help. I think that's a really important thing for me to put across to people. And like we said, things can be incredibly hard and incredibly beautiful, or just incredibly hard or just incredibly beautiful at times. But I think being true to yourself and recognizing that, you know, what you're doing is a really difficult thing is so important.
And what would you say are some of the low cost or free things that people can do to help shift their mindset when they're going through such a difficult time like this?
Friends. I think my friends got me through. Like, if you're lucky enough to have a support network of friends or family, talk to them, engage with them. You know, like I even FaceTimed you, you know, at times I'm in the hospital and be like, look at me and like the baby and stuff, because it made me feel connected to the outer world. I also think reading is really important. Reading to the baby, for example, is super amazing. Dr. Gowrie as well, like the gentle birthing method, you can find like stuff on Spotify, you know, like hypnobirthing, things like that, which I think is super important. Neonatal classes, you know, you can sign up to those as well. You know, there's loads of different things. And again, if you are unfortunate of somebody that needs to be in the NICU, you know, they offer loads of mental health support. And even in the maternity ward, to be honest with you, even during my pregnancy, the NHS provide mental health support.
Wow.
Amazing. It's amazing.
Do you think your opinion of the NHS is, I mean, you've actually always had a very positive opinion of the NHS, but I always think that, you know, we never appreciate something until we've actually got it.
I think, you know what, the NHS are understaffed and overworked. And you know what, I think that ultimately, when it comes to real emergencies,
they're amazing.
Correct.
I have to say, Rona, I think that, you know, I think you're one of the bravest and strongest and most resilient people I know. And that's not because of like what you have or we've given in life. I think you work hard at those things every single day. And I think to come here and to share your story and to want to help other women and mothers going through this is just like truly commendable. And also to say it with like such conviction, you know, like sometimes when you're talking to me, I'm smiling because I can see the old you back. Like you're so passionate and you're like, you know, you have to say this. And I think people who have watched our podcast before will see how incredible it is to see how much you've grown, how openly you've shared this, and how brave you've been, because it is a brave thing to talk about. You know, not everybody shares this because, like you said, there's so much shame and judgment and stigma. And, you know, it is vulnerable to share such a big part of your life. So thank you for coming to do this with me.
Shiv. I appreciate you.
And before you do, I have a quote. It might make you cry, though. It might make me cry. I don't know if I'm
crying like this whole way
I
through.
feel like I don't want to do it. Oh God, I don't know. Should I say it? I think I'm going to bawl my eyes out. And one day when you're old enough, my son, I'll tell you about how you had healed a little girl unknowingly. And one day when you feel lost in the big world, I'll tell you that little girl was me.
Oh. Sorry, everyone.
How amazing is that?
Yeah.
I saw that and I thought of you because I feel that Apollo did heal you.
Yeah.
And like he brought out such a different side of your really maternal side.
Do you really feel that?
Yeah, I really do.
Oh, thank you.
I think like it's such a blessing. And I think, like you said earlier, you don't think you were meant to be a mum. I think you really